this is Andy C from Piece of 8-Bit. Welcome to this week's video. We're going to be doing a bit of a how-to this week, and we're going to be doing a little bit of TLC for our Nintendo Entertainment System over here. I've been having a few problems with it, so I'm living with it for the month of March. But ever since I've owned this NES, I've had a few issues getting my cartridges to work. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at replacing the cartridge slot reader inside the NES, and it is not as scary as it might sound. So we're going to do that, but before we do that, which is quite an extreme thing to do, we're just going to talk a little bit about what we can do just to check that it's not our cartridges that are the problem. So the issue that I've had is that I've had a couple of cartridges which will usually work, and then a load of cartridges which just don't work, and I just cannot get them to work. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a prime example of that. I love this game, and I've really struggled to get it to work. Sometimes it will work, so I know the cartridge works. Sometimes it will work. Super Mario Bros., the original one, works most of the time. Then I've got some games which just won't load. I don't think the cartridges are broken. I know this one isn't because I have managed to get it to work before, and a couple of the others I've managed to get work maybe once or twice, and then I've not been able to get them working again. I know the machine is working because obviously I can load the cartridges, so it must be something to do with the cartridge reader itself or the contacts on the cartridges. So one of the first things that we can do is we can actually just give them a bit of a clean. Now, one of the things you might have done when you were a kid was if you were struggling to load them up, what you might have done is just blown into the top of the cartridge, and that might have fixed the problem for you. It's a little bit of a red herring, because what you're doing basically is the action of taking the cartridge out of the machine and putting it back in the machine is probably enough just to remove a bit of grime on the contacts there and get the cartridge working again. By blowing on it, you've gone, oh, I blew on that, so you've associated that with the cartridge now working. Now, some of you may swear blind that absolutely works. There's no scientific reason why that would work. The grime is sort of ingrained on there. There's not bits of dust just floating around in here. There might be, but it's pretty unlikely. What you are doing though is you're introducing moisture from your breath into the cartridge, which can cause problems later on down the line, can cause bits of corrosion or whatever. So you don't really want to be doing that. What you want to do is you want to use something called isopropyl alcohol, IPA. I'm using this 99.9% pure isopropyl alcohol. And what we're going to also need is some bamboo cotton buds, which look like this, or Q-tips to my American friends. And what we're going to do is we're going to just dip those into the isopropyl alcohol, give them a good soak. We're going to take our cartridge, and we're going to give our cartridge just a really good little clean. So we're going to start one side, and we're just going to rub each of the contacts, taking our time, applying a little bit of pressure as we go, all the way to the end of the cartridge. So I'm not going to do this one again. I've done this one a few times. Just making sure you get on the corners as well, right up to the edges. Flip the cartridge over. You possibly, if it's really dirty, use a new one. So dip it in the isopropyl alcohol, use the other side of your little cotton wool bud, and then do the same all the way to the end of that as well. And then you can just, if you want to, just give it a bit of a clean along the bottom as well. Just give the plastic a little bit of a clean. So the whole thing, you've got all of the dust and grime removed from the actual contacts on the cartridge itself. 99 times out of 100, that is going to work well for you. You're going to find that that actually solves most of your problems. And with a lot of systems that I've had, whenever I've bought a new cartridge, I've always given it a clean first anyway, because what you'd want to do is if it's been sitting on a shelf for ages uncovered, you're going to introduce any grime and dirt and muck or whatever into the console, which you don't want to do. So I would always advise giving the cartridges a little bit of a clean before you try them anyway. Okay, so we've given our cartridge a clean. Maybe that hasn't worked for us. So the other thing you can then do is you can, with the same technique, if you can get to the cartridge reader, the actual thing where the cartridge slots in, you can actually do the same trick. Get yourself either a bit of cloth, if it's quite tight space, and then something you can use just to poke the cloth in, make sure it's clean, obviously soak it with the isopropyl alcohol and give it a good clean, and just clean the contacts inside the console. For some consoles that's nice and straightforward to do depending on the console. So Master System for instance, you can get in there nice and easily and give the contacts a little bit of a clean in there, and that will solve your problems, hopefully solve your problems. With the NES it's a little bit more involved. So with the NES you've got to take the lid off. You can see the little light flashing here on the NES showing me that it can't read the cartridge that's in here, so this is the problem that I've been having. What you can do is you can take this lid off here, and this is also in the video as well, it'll show you how to get into it. There's a little metal plate inside, you take that off and then you can get to the cartridge slot holder there, the little connector. That is what this is. This is a new one. So you probably gather this is something that I'm about to replace in the NES. So this is a new one, and essentially what I'm going to do then is I can give this a clean now. It's a bit tight for the cotton wool buds, so I'm probably just going to use well, what I did when I cleaned it was use a little bit of cloth and a bit of card, and just popped it in there, soaked the clean cloth in the isopropyl alcohol, and then just gave it a bit of a clean there. So that worked. It cleaned well enough, but it didn't solve the problem, unfortunately. So what I think is going on is I think that the cartridge holder thing in there, the little contact thing in there, is actually just a bit worn out. So what we're going to do in the latter part of this video is replace this, and it is not as scary as you might think. So we're going to give this a bit of a replace and see if that fixes the problem for us. Before we do that, we're going to need a few little things. So you're going to need just a Phillips head screwdriver. You're probably going to want a small one as well, because on the corners underneath here, the screws are quite embedded, so you might struggle to get this one will fit, but some screwdrivers you might struggle to fit. I've got a little toolkit here which I use, which I find really useful, and I've got a selection of different heads and a screwdriver which has got an extendable end, and it's also got like a little flexible thing on it as well, which is great for doing little bits of work like this. So make sure you've got that. You might also want to get yourself an anti-static wristband to put around your wrist to basically remove any static. If you haven't got one, just make sure you touch something that's earthed before you start, and just try and avoid touching any of the components on the board as well, so just to make sure that you don't cause any damage. And with this you won't need to. I think you can generally do this without having to touch anything on the board. So that's it then. So go and find yourself a nice quiet space, take your time to do it, don't be daunted. There's no daunted at all. There's no soldering or anything else like that involved. It is quite a straightforward procedure, and hopefully it will make your NES feel like new. So let's get on, and I will run through how to replace the 72-pin connector inside your Nintendo Entertainment System, and hopefully it will feel like a brand new machine when we're all done. I'll see you there. Okay, so before you get started, what you need to do is grab yourself maybe a few little pots like this, just to pop the screws in. These are little takeaway pots. I find these really useful. Make sure you have anti-static yourself, so either use an anti-static wristband or make sure you've grounded yourself before you make a start with the electronics in here, because obviously very delicate, also very old. What we're going to do first, we're going to remove these screws here. So I've already loosened them because they're actually quite tight, so you might struggle with them. Standard Phillips head screwdriver, just a small one will do the job. So we're just going to get those removed, and I will speed up the video so you can see what we're doing. Okay, welcome back. I had a real problem with one of the corner screws. It just did not want to budge. You've got to remember that this is, you know, a 40-year-old piece of equipment here, so you might struggle to get some of the screws out, but we've got those out now. So first of all, we're just going to check I haven't got a cartridge in here. I do. Let's take that out, and I will just flip that back over again. So let's get this off now. Just move that out of the way and then flip that over. So what you're seeing here now, you've got this protective plate here, and then you've got your card reader in the back here. So, well, actually not, be in here, behind here. So we're going to take this all apart, take this off, and then we should just be able to replace the card reader when we get to it. So first thing we're going to do is remove this top plate here. So there's a few screws here, here, and then two at the back here, which should probably just about make out. You see, I can get that there just here. So we're just going to remove those and get this plate off. So that's the first thing. So I've got another little pot to put those screws in when we've taken those off. So let's grab that, and then I will fast forward through getting this plate removed. There we go then. So we've removed the plate now. I noticed actually I'm missing a screw, and I did have one really stubborn one as well at the back here. Yeah, well that's off now. So let's move that out of the way as well. So now what you're seeing in here is you've got the place where you pop your cartridges in and push it down and clip it. And then the back here is this card reader, which is what we're going to replace. The next thing we need to do is remove this this cartridge slot area here, and let's get that removed. So we've got 6 screws for this. So here and here, and then 2 here. You can't see that. Hang on, let me just move that down a bit. 2 here, and then 2 also on this side as well. So let's get those removed as well. I'm going to grab another pot for those. Put that in there. Okay, so that is now unfastened, so we're going to remove this section in a moment. Just remember, when you put the screws back in, the 2 brass ones are going to go on the front corners and the back corners, and then you've got 2 slightly longer silver screws which go on this this second hole here on either side. So we're just going to pull this out now. This should come out fairly easily. Okay, so you might just have to sort of just lift it up at the front to bring it out there. So that's out now, so we'll pop that in very gently. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, so just to get this board lifted off here, there's 2 more screws just around here, around this big capacitor here. So there and just there. I'm going to remove those, and hopefully that will just allow me just to gently lift this board out. I'm not going to disconnect anything. I've seen some videos online, people will start to disconnect bits and pieces underneath, but I don't think you're going to need to do that. So we'll give that a go, see how we get on. Hope if I use the right screwdriver. So let's just do that. Okay, so now what we're going to do, now we can get to this part. Obviously everything's very loose in here, so be very careful. This should just slide off, so we're just going to pull this off very gently, trying carefully not to touch any of the solder or any of the components on the board if you can. Obviously this has probably been here for some 40 odd years, that just came away. So, I mean, looking at it, I can see on this board here, I can see that some of the pins are a little bit bent on the end, which is why I think actually when I was putting the cartridges in, if I moved them sort of left and right a little bit, sometimes they would just read. And I think some of the cartridges have a slightly thicker board in them, so they were reading better. But hopefully, just replacing this is going to do the job. So let's go ahead and do that. So I've ordered a new part from Amazon. Cost about £10. You shouldn't need to spend very much. It's quite a simple little thing. So hopefully this should be all that we need to get us back up and running with our cartridges as well. So we're just going to do now the reverse of what we did before. So we're just going to slot this onto here. Looks like a harmonica. Yeah, make sure you get it in correctly. What you can just do is just very carefully just waggle it on. Don't force it, because if you break the circuit board, it is game over. There we go. Okay, so now we know that that's all set up correctly. Make sure the plate is in the right place in the bottom, and then we're just going to do exactly the reverse of what we've just done and get this all slotted back together. Now this bit can be a bit tricky to do whilst you sort of try and get everything kind of lined up again. So let's just make sure we've got that. So there's on the bottom side, there's a metal piece here and there's some slots that it needs to go in. So just keep that in your mind when you're doing that. There we go. All right, so just be very gentle. I'm sure there's some people wincing and what are you doing to that poor NES? You can always just lift this metal plate up together. There we go, and that just drops back in there like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is exactly the reverse of what we just did. That's it. There we go. That's it. Right, that should slot all back in. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so yes. Okay then. So you can obviously remove these screws, put these screws back in. I think it's easier if the board is a little bit looser to then slot the card slot back in there like that. Okay, where did I put my screwdrivers? Next question. Not that one, but it's fine, it'll do. Right, remember now that these longer screws here go into the screw hole that's one in from the end there. So let's just pop those in now. The nice thing about this repair is there's no soldering involved, which means that you know, as long as you've got a little bit of confidence in electronics and as long as you're very careful, you should be able to do it yourself. It's just a little bit fiddly, and obviously because the unit is so old, you know, some of these screws are quite stubborn, so you might find that you have one or two on a few corners that don't work. Like I said, I've got one missing. I don't know where that's gone, but yeah, you should be fine to do it yourself. Okay. It should be nice and sturdy now, as we'll just put this last one in the corner here. Okay, so next step is, now we've got all of this back in, we now need to pop the metal plate back on and get everything attached back down into the onto the chassis. So we're just going to place this back on, nice and easy to get it back on. There's a little bit of a fiddle on this corner here, so just on this corner here, you're going to just struggle to get it around here a little bit, so just be careful when you're doing that. There we go. Should just slot straight back on the top, but it's a little bit of an awkward shape, so just be careful when you're doing it. I think I'm actually missing 2 screws, not 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put screws into the sort of edgemost pieces, just to give it the best amount of support. It's managed like that for longer than I've owned it, and it's been fine, so I think we'll be okay. And also, one of the things you want to do before you start fastening everything back up is check that your switches are still working, nothing's popped out, all your connectors are in good stead, and obviously that your cartridge slot here, all of that is working fine as well. So last thing you want to do is connect it all back together, only to find that you've missed something, or that something's popped out, or a spring's popped out, or whatever. Okay, so that's all the screws back into the inside of the unit. So we've reversed what we've done. So obviously we've connected the new unit, put the before we attach the board back in, pop the card slot in, the cartridge slot in, popped the metal housing over the top to make sure that that's nice and protected, pop our screws back in. That obviously attaches the metal housing, but it also attaches, it holds everything together, which is everything that's holding the board as well. We've checked our buttons, we've checked our connectors, everything looks good. So we should be in a position now where we can pop the lid back on this and give it a try. So let's get the lid back on. We've got those 6 corner screws, which we're going to pop back in. And remember, I think probably some good advice here. I noticed that some of the heads on these are starting to look a little bit worn, so I assume this has been opened a couple of times before as well. So just go easy with it, and I wouldn't suggest popping it too tight when you put it all together again. I would just hand tight. I wouldn't go crazy with it, in case you need to get back into it again. I think that as time goes on, these screws are going to become less and less forgiving. They're quite tricky to get back in actually. So let's. I'm just going to go ahead and put these in, and then we'll get it fired up and you can have a look. Okay, so there we go, that's all now back in. I've literally turned the screws a couple of times just to get them to hold into there. They are quite stiff, so I think it's quite important to get those just not too tight and taking the heads off them. Obviously at some point, if you wanted to, you could replace the screws as well. I'm sure they're very easy to find, but there you go. So that is the old unit now replaced. I'm hoping this is going to make a difference, because this doesn't, you know, like, it doesn't look too bad. So I am going to keep it as a spare. I'm going to just clean it up, but I'm hoping that this change makes all the difference. So I'm going to go get this fired up now, and yeah, we'll see if it's worked. Okay, so that is the procedure completed. Here is the offending part. So this is the old one. Looks very, very similar to the new one that we showed you earlier. And I can see here that a few of the pins are a little bit bent, and I think it is just a bit worn out. I think they've just got pressed down over the years, and it's just not making good contact with the cartridge anymore. So I'm going to keep this as a spare, just to reference, but I might see if I can try and fix it up. But probably it's going to be surplus to requirements. It might find itself in the bin at some point in the future when I just can't figure out what to do with it. They're only £10, between £10 and £20. You know, what's that, $15, $20, $25, something like that. So really, you don't need to be too worried about it. Really, they're pretty inexpensive. There's no electronics in these. They're just, you know, they're just connectors really. So I have got my trusty NES hooked up to the television. So let's now see if my repairs have worked. I'm a little bit anxious about this, but let's give it a go and see if we have managed to get it fixed. Alright, so we're going to take the cartridge that has caused me the most pain and suffering, Super Mario Bros. 3. I've had a lot of trouble getting this one to work, so we're going to give it a go. I've got the NES hooked up to the TV. New cartridge slot ready to go, so let's get this popped in and see how we get on. So let's pop this in here. Now, straight away, that was much tougher to get in there. Normally it's quite loose and you can move the cartridge around. There's no movement in there at all. That's nice and snug in there. Let's pop that down. Pop the lid down. Moment of truth. How do we get on? And there we go. That is it. Super Mario Bros. 3. Straight away, first time working. Well, it's not strictly the first time because I have put the cartridge in. Well, I haven't actually turned it on. That is the first time I've turned it on, but I have put the cartridge in before, and I did notice how much stiffer it was. It feels like a new console. It's brilliant, and this NES is in such good condition. There's no yellowing or anything on it, so it actually feels like it did on the day that it was new, which is fantastic. So, and I really want to play Super Mario Bros. 3 now, which is yeah, sitting there behind me. I love that game. And actually, if you enjoy those games, please do go and check out last week's video when I look at the Mario Brothers games on the NES, and we talk about how much of an impact they had and whether they saved gaming. They certainly had a massive impact, that's for sure, so go check that video out. But yeah, that's it then. So hopefully you would consider that to be a relatively easy procedure. Anybody can give it a go. You don't need an electronics degree to do it. If you are nervous about doing it, obviously go and get it fixed by a reputable repairer. You know, I know how precious these things are, but if you've got a cartridge slot that isn't working, that is a pretty useless piece of kit for you. So it's a relatively inexpensive fix you can do yourself. Doesn't require any soldering or anything else like that. Just a few simple tools and a bit of patience and time, and you can get your NES feeling like new again. So I encourage you to give it a try if you're feeling confident enough. If you're not, obviously don't force the issue, but just take it easy, take your time, be gentle with it, and you could find that you're in a situation where you've got a console which feels like it's brand new. So there you go. So that's it for this week. Coming up in the video is going to be some more NES stuff, and within the next probably 24 to 48 hours we'll be also doing the Retro Red Steve PS1 Racer Challenge as well. That is also due now, so need to get that in and done, so keep an eye open for that. And there will obviously be more NES content as we continue through March. I've really loved that, and obviously I've got a lot of games I can have a go with, which I'm super excited about. So I'm going to get and clean those cartridges and get this back into the living room where it was sitting before, and then crack on. So yes, yeah, enjoy these videos. Please do hit that like and subscribe button. Obviously hit that bell icon for notifications as well. Thank you so much for your support up to now. Just leaves me to say, until the next time, please do all take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.